From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you were with us, and happy 2021. This is my first Open Line of the new year, and we are kicking off the new year talking about politics. Certainly, it's a huge night in Georgia, but we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is what's going to happen tomorrow. And tomorrow is when Congress is supposed to ratify the presidential election. But Tennessee's two senators have said they will not vote to do that tomorrow. And there are other senators that are joining them. Tennessee's the only state that has two senators who have said they will not vote to do that. We have here in Nashville, there's a state representative, Mike Stewart, and he has written a letter to Senator Blackburn that I have right here. In that letter, he says, "I read with astonishment your statement calling the presidential election tainted and stating you will reject the vote of the Electoral College." He goes on to ask for proof that there was any sort of problem with the voting. And so we're going to talk to him about this letter, his concerns. I will add, we asked the Republican Party to send someone to this show, and they did not send anyone. So I'm happy to welcome now Representative Mike Stewart joining us via Zoom as our guests continue to join us via Zoom. Is that from your home there, Representative? And might be muted, which also happens.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, there. Great.
Sorry about that.
Is that from your home?
Yes, I'm from my house. I hope that's all right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. So you wrote this letter. Tell us about this letter. I read the opening line. I read with astonishment your statement calling the recent presidential election tainted and stating you will reject the vote of the Electoral College. Why did you write the letter?
I wrote the letter because what Senators Blackburn, what Senator Blackburn is doing is completely defying our American system of government, and it's both of our senators in Tennessee apparently are willing to sign on with Ted Cruz's proposal. And this is different from normal partisan politics. I'm in the Tennessee legislature. I'm in the minority. I'm a Democrat. The Republicans have the majority. I have never suggested that the Republican members of the House are somehow disqualified because I disagree with their views. I often disagree with them very vehemently, but if they're elected by the people, they have the right to exercise their power and push their philosophy. And if I don't like it, I need to go get more Democrats elected. That's how our system works. And I've always said, as long as a bill passes fairly and the people's representatives have voted appropriately, that's the way it should be. Because the people run the country, the people run the state of Tennessee, not particular interests. And so just because the Republicans in the House here don't vote the way I want them to in many instances, that doesn't mean that they're illegitimate. They're appropriate elected officials. They've been elected and they have the right to their power. What Senator Blackburn is suggesting, and newly elected Senator Hagerty is suggesting, is that the presidential election, which future President-elect Biden clearly won, is tainted, in their words, is inappropriate, is not legitimate. That is something we've never seen in the United States of America before. That is the sort of thing you see in failing or failed countries like Venezuela. It is completely outrageous. And it's different from normal partisan politics. These senators are doing something that has no precedent in modern history. Every so often, there have been a handful of people who've objected to certain presidential candidates. That was inappropriate. And here it is totally crazy. And they're creating a terrible precedent whereby people will actually seriously consider undermining our elections and potentially having Congress reverse presidential elections. It's outrageous. They should be ashamed of themselves. It's totally different than normal partisan politics. It's the politics of failed states, and it's not something we should ever tolerate in the United States of America.
You wrote in your letter, many citizens in my district would be very interested to know what specific evidence you are relying on for this decision. Has she given you any specific evidence? Are you aware of any specific evidence?
None whatsoever. And I've spoken on this as much as I possibly can. This has been featured on the news. Obviously, thank you for having me on your show. I'm confident that both senators are aware of this request. Neither one, of course, has come forward with a single specific because they can't. Look, the courts have looked at this. You know, anybody with any political sense could look at the election returns and know that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris won the election. They didn't just win by a hair. They won multiple states by many thousands of votes. But nevertheless, we went through the process of people evaluating that. The Trump team brought numerous lawsuits attempting to challenge for many aspects of these elections. Many of these lawsuits were brought before judges that are either Republicans or Republican appointees. All of the members of the judiciary took the same position, which is these claims are not based on reality, and rejected them, including the Supreme Court, which of course is largely made up of Republican appointees. The point is, Democrats have looked at this, Republicans have looked at this. These claims of fraud have been looked at carefully. The Trump team has had every possible opportunity to really present evidence of fraud, and there is none. And therefore, or there's no evidence of any significant or widespread fraud. And so for elected senators, some of the primary leaders in the United States of America, to nevertheless be questioning the results of this election, that is something totally new in our politics. It's a complete departure from the American way, which is to have peaceful transition of power. It really calls into question whether or not Senators Blackburn and Hagerty have the personal integrity that is needed for the office that they have chosen to serve in.
Again, we ask again, the Republican Party to send somebody. They did not, but you could look at some writings here that they've sent out. Looks like Blackburn's press office. And she sent a long statement here. She says, by any measure, the allegations of fraud and irregularities in the 2020 election exceed any in our lifetimes. She then goes on to present polling. Tragically, as she writes, tragically, polling shows 39% of Americans believe the election was rigged. That belief is held 67% by Republicans, 17% by Democrats. And she's saying we are not trying to thwart the democratic process, but rather protect it. And so she's calling for an immediate audit, an audit that would take 10 days or less.
No, let's walk through that. Let's unfold all of that, okay? First of all, notice again, just in case she just forgot to mention all of the specific fraud evidence that she has when she made her first public announcement with her fellow senator. I specifically said, look, tell us what the specific allegations, what the evidence is. Tell us if you disagree with a particular court that has made a ruling. So that's her opportunity to say, well, the evidence is this, and I disagree with this or that court that came to a different conclusion. Of course, you notice in her lengthy statement, there's a lot of rhetoric, but there are no facts. There's no specific allegation. And why is that? The reason is because, one, she doesn't have any evidence. And two, she knows if she accuses somebody of fraud by name, if she lists a specific, if she actually can try to back up her story, she'd probably be sued for defamation. Because there's no truth to any of this. It's all a bunch of nonsense. So here's a United States senator who's sworn to uphold the Constitution. Her job, number one, is to uphold the American system. And what she's saying with no evidence, with no basis in fact, is we should no longer trust our election. This is so outrageous. And I would just point out the Republicans that have courageously spoken out against this crazy nonsense that Senators Blackburn and Hagerty are, for political purposes, signed onto. Paul Ryan, former Speaker of the House, has said this is completely un-American what Senators Blackburn and Hagerty are doing. It's completely outrageous. Elections have consequences, and we should respect them. Former Vice President Cheney's daughter, I believe her name is Liz Cheney, who's a congresswoman from Wyoming, and I think the third-ranking member of leadership in the House for the Republicans, has created a lengthy memo explaining why all of these allegations are total nonsense. And to her credit, has said this is an incredibly dangerous path. I understand Bob Corker, I haven't seen the statement, came out and spoke out against this. You know, thank God we have these patriotic Americans that are willing to stand up and call out this for what it is, which is completely un-American, a completely un-American effort to undermine our election process. And I would say, I have no doubt in my mind that if Democrats were doing this, I would speak out against them as well. Democrats should not undermine our elections, and Republicans should not undermine our elections. We should respect the will of the people. You know, when President Trump was elected, I certainly never went on TV or in any media claimed that he was not elected or didn't have the right to exercise his power passed by the people. And Democrats voted in this process to respect the electoral count when President Trump was elected.
So do you
despite
think,
the fact that they agree with him politically, pardon me.
So what do you think that there are those that are signing on to this? There are a bunch in the House, and then 13 senators, we just put their pictures up there. Do you think they know, I guess they know they're going to lose. I mean, even in the statement, they're like, it's likely we will lose, but we're doing this to try and uphold the integrity of the elections. You're worried about the path we're going down here, obviously.
Yeah, what they're saying, take Senator Blackburn. She lives in Williamson County. She has a lot of citizens, I suspect, that who are Republicans, who she knows do not respect this path that she's going down. And she's trying to say to them by that statement, kind of wink, wink, look, I know it's baloney. I know I'm just pandering to my base. This is just a political move on my part. She's trying to tell them, look, I don't really believe any of this nonsense. I'm just saying this to protect myself politically. Don't worry, it's not going to work. Here's the problem with that, is that's what happened in the Weimar Republic before Hitler took over Germany. That's what happens in Latin America all the time, where you have all these countries that sway from democracy to dictatorship. People chip away at the democratic traditions and then they fall apart. What's happened in the United States year after year, decade after decade, is we've had very hotly contested presidential elections, sometimes with very significant ideological differences being worked out. And yet at the end of the election, people have respected the results. You know, President Roosevelt was hated by many citizens because of his policies. But you didn't have Republicans challenging President Roosevelt's right to rule. Ronald Reagan, I thought many of Ronald Reagan's policies were very bad. So did many people I know. But nobody ever suggested that Ronald Reagan did not earn by his election the right to lead the country. Like it or not, Vice President Biden, now President-elect Biden, and Vice President-elect Harris won the election overwhelmingly in multiple states. Everybody who is an elected official in the United States of America should recognize that, because that's the American way. It's the peaceful transition of power. What Senators Blackburn and Hagerty are doing is one of the most outrageous, intellectually dishonest political acts, certainly that I've ever witnessed, that's ever occurred in the United States. We've never gone down this perilous road. And it's unconstitutional. And Hagerty, in particular, as a trained lawyer, should be ashamed of himself, because he knows what he's doing is a total fraud on the people. It's totally ridiculous.
Where do you think this leaves us in 4 years or 8 years? Do you think Democrats would do the same thing, you know, if they lose a close election?
If Democrats do the same thing, they should be thrown out of office. Democrats should respect elections, just like Republicans should respect elections. Look, Speaker Sexton and I, Speaker of the House, House. We disagree on many, many major issues. Right now, he's Speaker because he's got the votes. Look, I don't agree with him politically, but until the people of Tennessee make a different choice in their elections, he has the right to rule. He has the right to be Speaker. That's how politics works. Just because I don't agree with him politically doesn't mean I get what I want. I only get to represent my district because that's the only place where citizens have bestowed power upon me. And so that's what I want to emphasize. Again, like Senator Blackburn and I, we disagree on virtually every political issue. She doesn't agree with me, I'm sure, on civil rights. She doesn't agree with me on the rights of workers. She doesn't agree with me on just about anything. But that's her prerogative. She's an elected official. She's not up there to do what I want. She's up there to do what she believes the people want her to do, and that's her right. And yeah, I would love to have a Democratic senator in the state of Tennessee, but so far, we have not achieved that in recent elections. So she and Senator Hagerty have the right to rule and cast their votes as they see fit philosophically. That's politics. That's how it should be. The people get to decide who represent them. This is a totally different thing. What she and Senator Hagerty are doing, the unprecedented and unbelievable road that they are going down, leads to a situation where millions of people vote for the President of the United States, and then Congress undermines and overturns that election. Now, it's certainly possible that the Supreme Court would, reading the Constitution, reject that idea that they're promoting. But why would we ever go there? Why would we ever suggest to the people of the United States that elections are tainted when they are not? Why would we ever suggest that Congress, that members of Congress should reject a presidential vote simply because they disagree with the result? It's just completely ridiculous. And yes, you asked about Democrats. Yes, if Democrats do this, they, like Senators Blackburn and Hagerty, would be disqualifying themselves and would be demonstrating that they don't believe in our political system. Democrats shouldn't do it. Republicans shouldn't do it.
Okay.
It's just totally ridiculous.
All right, that sets the table for our discussion. So we're going to go to break now, and then we'll start taking calls. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. How do you feel about this? It's an interesting topic, certainly. Take a break. Be back right after this.